We have been invited and received an acceptance from Michael Corrigan, who is currently the District 14 City Council guy and who is running for tax collector. We previously interviewed Mr. Kravitz and Mr. Taylor before the first election. We had common questions that we asked both of them, and we're going to ask you the very same questions because we're putting this onto a YouTube posting afterwards. So, but in addition to these common questions, if any members of the panel here have other questions for you, then they'll go ahead and answer that. But we're going to start by giving you 3 minutes to basically say whatever you want to say, and at the end we'll give you a couple of minutes to come back and reiterate whatever you think your major points are. So, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, good morning, and thank you for taking time out of your Saturday to come spend with me to talk to me about my race for tax collector. I am Michael Corrigan. I would like to be your tax collector for the next 4 years. I think I bring to the office 3 decades of business experience and 3 decades of community leadership. I started a company in 1980 when I graduated from high school called New Trend Plastics. Literally, the first job there was to put the foundations in the building upon which we built our business. I've done every single job in that business all the way up until now. I serve as CEO, being elevated to that position last October. In those 30 years, we've been extremely successful at New Trend Plastics, and we've been successful for 3 primary reasons. 1 is we do it right the first time. 2 is we do it highly efficiently. And 3 is we pass those savings on to our customers. The majority of our customers I have today, I got when I bought the company in 1980. So we're obviously doing something right. Even in these horrible economic times, we're still successful because we think those 3 things make a difference. Think about the tax collector's office. What do you want from your tax collector? You want to do it right the first time. You want them to do it highly efficiently. And you want to pass those savings back to us, all of us, the taxpayers. And that's what I want to do as your tax collector. I haven't just been in business for 30 years. I've been highly involved in the community with great organizations like Big Brothers Big Sisters. I started as a little brother and became chairman of that board. Riverside Avenue Preservation, I'm a property owner in the Riverside Avenue area, and became a 2-term chairman of that organization. Rotary Club West Jacksonville, I joined that club and then ended up being president in 2006 and 2007. I also am currently on 11 boards and commissions in addition to being on the Jacksonville City Council and CEO of my business. In those 11 boards and commissions, I chair 3 of them. So I am highly involved in the community, not just in the business aspect, not just in the political aspect, but in a variety of different aspects in this community. And I want to take those 30 years of experience in that leadership role that I've achieved in member organizations and take over the leadership of the tax collector's office. The current tax collector has done a good job of upgrading systems in the office. I'm very proud of the status of the office at this point. The overwhelming problem that I see in the office is a lack of motivation by the employees due to the Real ID program that the state of Florida has imposed upon our tax collector's offices. And those employees need to be remotivated to do the job better, serve the customers better, and make sure that our experience in the tax collector's office is wonderful. I'm going to take everything I have in my business experience and community experience to do that for the customers in the tax collector's office.
Okay, thank you. I take it that as a young man you saw The Graduate and took heed from that advice.
That's exactly right, John.
Oh my God.
One of my favorite scenes, as a matter of fact.
I would think so. Well, our first question that is a common question that we asked everybody was, and you touched on it already in your opening statement, was just what new efficiencies can you achieve in the Office of Tax Collectors beyond what your opponent could accomplish or has already been accomplished by the present administration?
Sure. 2 things. 1, I don't know what I can do better than my opponent in this race because he hasn't talked about what he's going to do when he gets there. I will tell you what I'm going to do. I do know this from my service on the City Council that 3 of the 4 most expensive leases that the consolidated officers of your government have are the tax collector's offices. Last time I checked, there was not a tax collector office at St. John's Town Center. So why are we paying top dollar for locations that aren't top locations? So we need to go back and do a comprehensive review of that. The first day I get there, I'll start that review and find out what leases do we have the flexibility to be able to reduce the cost to taxpayers. Second is, I'm going to take my name off the building. Currently, the tax collector's office have the name of the tax collector on the building. That obviously will come down because the tax collector will change, but I'm not putting my name back up on the marquee outside that building. It's not my office. It is the citizens' tax collector's office, and it should be that. And I don't need my name on the building to be able to be a great tax collector. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to do a comprehensive overview of all the processes that we use in the office. I know that the number one and the most obvious is the driver's license process. It's a state, actually a federal mandated pass-through state to us. And I'm going to go in and find out how can we improve that process? How can we make sure as the customers come in that they have what they need in order to be able to get that service, and then make sure that we get them in and out the door faster. Something else that's going to happen to us unless the state legislature changes that very soon is they're going to change the way that learner's permits are issued. They're now done, majority of them are online. Now those thousands of people are going to be coming to our office and eating up more staff time in the tax collector's office if the legislature doesn't change the current process. I want to make sure that we find a way that doesn't increase the burden on the taxpayers by having to increase the staff to do that. We can do it better. I know we can do it better. I've proven it over and over again in my years of business.
All right, Victor?
How would you use your status as tax collector to influence public policy beyond the mundane statutory obligations of the office? So there's very little flexibility as far as legislation. You've got to run the office the way you're required to. But how else would you use that position, leverage the position to influence public policy?
Well, I think that we shouldn't get too far into public policy of the tax collector's office. I think tax collector's office is a managerial type process, and you're exactly right. State statutes limits what you can do as far as influencing policy through the government. I will tell you that every minute that the tax collector spends occupying the mayor's time is another minute the mayor can't lead the city forward. So I think you have to balance your involvement in public policy versus the time that you're taking out of the administration's job to run this government. Having said that, I will tell you that I am always creative in everything I do. In my 8 years on the city council, I've been creative looking for unique ways to save us money and increase efficiencies. And I'm not going to stop doing that just because I changed office locations. I'm going to continue to do that. An excellent example was when the school system was going to charge about $1 million a year to pay a stormwater fee, and it was going to come out of the classrooms and reduce teachers in the classrooms. I worked directly with the school system and the mayor's office to find a way to make sure that the school system didn't lose $1,000 in operation costs $1 million in operation costs each year, and I'm proud of the outcome of that. And the school system doesn't pay it, and the city is partnering with them to do joint stormwater projects. So that kind of collaboration is what I'm going to continue to do, even when I'm in the tax collector.
Can I follow up with this?
Absolutely.
You brought up the stormwater fee. Prior, the fee was collected by not putting it on the tax as a special assessment on the tax bill.
Right.
And then the mayor proposed and ultimately got that on there. And I know that the current tax collector was vocal on that issue. For an issue like that, let's say the city came up with this new fee mechanism for something.
Sure.
And they wanted to bill it versus putting it on the tax rolls as a special assessment or whatever, some kind of vehicle that they'd have an enforcement mechanism, potentially lose your home. Well, how would you take a position on that, or express or would you stay neutral?
I would make sure that I'm informing them, and obviously that's a legislative decision and an administrative decision.
Yes.
What you have to look at in all those cases are either the ones that have done in the past or ones that have done in the future is the cost of providing that service or cost of collecting that fee versus the hazards of putting it on your tax bill. And you're exactly right. There is still a continuing fear of what happens if people pay their property taxes and don't pay their fees. Do they lose their property, or do they not lose their property because there's a tax certificate go up against their property? That's a continuing interest, and I believe the role of the tax collector is to make sure, and I think that Mr. Hogan did a good job, make sure that the people making the legislative decision understand the repercussions of what we're getting ready to do. And obviously I'm going to be actively involved in that as that goes through. So I'm always leery of anything that could result in someone losing their home. And we had a forum several months ago, and they talked about how can you make sure that everybody pays their taxes. And my point was, how can we make sure everybody keeps their homes? In a horrible economic environment, how do we protect to make sure that everybody keeps their homes? Issuing a tax certificate or selling a tax deed should be an absolute last resort. Keeping people in their homes is how we're going to make this community succeed.
Okay, down the road, Rod.
All right. What would you do to make the public's use of your office more consumer friendly?
Well, I think it's a couple things. There's some things you can do before you get there, and there's some things you can do while you're there, and there's some few things you can do when you leave. Before you get there, we need to make sure that they actually need to come. The goal, I think, of the tax collector's office should be not to see you in my office. Think about the way that you used to get a video game, a movie 10 years ago, video game or a movie, either one. You went to a Blockbuster type store, you picked it off the shelf, you went up to the counter, you paid for it, they reached around the security barrier, gave it to you, you left, and you brought it back sometime later. Think about how that process is done today. Today, you go to either a red box type store or you go online and do it. You don't interact with a human being. Do that with your taxes. How did you pay your taxes 10 years ago? You went to the tax collector's office and you paid them. How do you do it now? You go to the tax collector's office and pay them. We actually penalize you if you try to do it online and not take up staff time. We've got to change that. We've got to go in and put modern technologies and programs in place to be able to do that. And one of the things I want to do is go and look at using electronic checks to be able to pay your property tax bill. You can do that online. There's no fee involved. There's no cost to the tax collector's office or to the taxpayers to do an electronic check to be able to do that. Every time we can get you to help us partner and do a transaction online or in a kiosk type situation, it's a savings for the taxpayer and it's an efficiency to the taxpayer. And that's what we have to look at. How do we go in and get creative with the way that we collect our taxes to be able to not increase the burden on the overall government, and at the same time make it more efficient to the taxpayers are paying. There's a lot of things we can do, and it's being done around the state, and I continue to research that. We just have to be able to do that. We had to spend a lot of time in the last 8 years getting systems up to date, up to speed, and Mr. Hogan's done a good job of doing that. Now it's time that we have those systems in place to look at efficiencies that we can do to even reduce the burden.
Conrad.
What savings do you see in future budgets from the tax collector?
I think it's two things. I think it's personnel and it's offices. There's currently 9 offices. I'm going to go in and make sure that that's the right number. It may be the right number. Mr. Hogan actually was looking at a 10th office in the Argyle area in the past several years, and we are not doing that. He decided not to do that at that time. So we have to find out, is 9 offices the right amount? Are we paying the right amount for those offices? As you look at leases in the tax collector's office, there's always going to be a cheaper lease, but to move a tax collector's office is about a $500,000 investment to be able to do that. So you have to look and say, what are the long-term benefits of us changing an office? So you need to do that to look to see if you can reduce the burden. And the second one is exactly what I talked about a minute ago. Let's use technology to be our friend and help reduce expenses. I don't anticipate the growth in staff ever in the tax collector's office. I anticipate a decrease in staff because every time we can take a current person-to-person transaction and convert it to an electronic transaction, that's going to result in savings in the overall budget of the office. And part of that's going to be working directly with the city council for them to understand that. The city council, as they approve a budget, and the tax collector's budget is one of the ones they approve, they're looking at dozens of budgets to get them to focus in and understand why are we investing in technology in this particular office. I'm going to have to show a return on investment in 2 ways. One, short-term for the immediate budget, and long-term for the overall budget looking forward in 2, 5, and 10 years.
Okay. Dan.
You've pretty well answered my question, but I have an additional one anyway. But other than the offices and the improvement in IT, what specific non-essential spending now occurring in your office would you seek to eliminate?
I don't know the complete answer to that question. I mean, obviously, I'm not in that office. I don't work in that office. I know all I can tell you is what I do with my business. In my business, there's 2 things to do from a business perspective. I empower my employees to do the job right. I empower them, and I trust them, and I verify what they're doing. And I think that's what I'll do when I go to the tax collector's office. I guarantee you there's ways, savings in those offices. There's savings that people want to do and just haven't been comfortable coming up and suggesting those savings. I do know the current tax collector has what he calls green light sessions, where he invites employees to come in and give ideas of what's going on and everything else. I'm not a believer in green lights because green lights turn to yellow lights, turn to red lights, and many times employees aren't going to come forward. I'm a person that gives my cell phone number to all my employees, and I said, look, if you see something or you think something should be changed different, call me and tell me, and I'll react to it immediately. And that's what I'm going to do in the tax collector's office. My partners in this work, I'm the tax collector. The reality is I don't collect very many people's taxes one-on-one. I rely on a staff of people in a system, integrated computer system, to collect those taxes and fees. I want them to be my partner in this. I want them to bring me the cost savings ideas. We're not afraid to cut the budget. That's going to be our goal from day one. And we're going to go there and find efficiencies and use those efficiencies. The one I mentioned a little earlier, not incur the expense of putting my name up on the marquee and everything. We don't need to do that. We're going to start day one saying, like, it's not about me. And we're going to continue that the entire 4 years.
Could you advise us the 3 largest contributors, either an entity or an individual, to your campaign?
It's difficult to say that for sure because it's 465 individuals were in the first race. I would probably say individuals, there's a number of husband and wives that have done that. There's probably 25 of those that have done that. I don't have a list with me. I'm trying to think if there's any organization that's done multiple donations. I don't recall one organization. I mean, there's probably a couple businesses that have done that. But there's a number of husband and wives that have donated to my campaign. But if you go back and look at my city council campaigns and look at this campaign, a lot of familiar names, people that had worked with me in previous nonprofits and seen what I've been able to do, supported me in city council and been supportive of what I've been able to do there. One of the advantages I have is I've never been super supported by one organization, and I'm pretty sure my opponent hasn't been either. So I think that's one of the benefits you're getting out of whoever becomes the next tax collector. Is we're both, and Mr. Kravitz, I'll say this about it. I think we both are very open, wide open, community-wide input type people. There's candidates and have been our candidates that are really supported by one individual or one movement. I don't think either one of the candidates run for tax collector in that situation.
Thank you.
Sure.
Let me go ahead and follow up with what probably is the most political question that I'm going to have, which obviously there were three people running in the first part of the race, and Ryan Taylor, who is in that office presently, has endorsed your opponent, Dick Kravitz, and I guess the question becomes, assuming that you're elected and Ryan Taylor doesn't find something else that he wants to do, but wants to continue working in the tax collector's office, what's your feeling about that?
Well, my feeling has nothing to do with Mr. Taylor. I will tell you, I got to know Ryan Taylor during the primary. He was a great person. I've gotten to know him and his wife, and they're very nice people. When I am elected on May 17th and assume the role of tax collector on July 1st, I'm going to do just what I told you I'd do this morning. I'm going to go in and do a comprehensive review, really starting on May 18th and building up until July 1st, to understand the people, the processes, and the infrastructure of the tax collector's office. I may not change a single thing in those offices, or I may change everything in those offices. But I know, I've heard the taxpayers, obviously as a council member, I hear from them all the time what they want in the tax collector's office, and I'm going to go in and make sure I can create that. And I'm going to be looking for partners in my office that are going to help me move that office forward. If you're I like you, I believe in your mission, and let's go do it, then you're going to be part of my team going in. If you're a person that says, no, this is a government agency and you can't do that, then I probably don't have room for you in my office. I succeed because I empower people and motivate people to help me succeed. I am by no means the smartest person in any room that I get in to work in. All I do is motivate people to do the best they can and help me partner to be successful. Now, the tax collector's office is not a retail business, so it's a little more difficult than normal. So it's going to take unique individuals to be able to be successful there, and that's the kind of people I'm looking for after I'm elected in 2017. So I like Mr. Taylor. Personally, I think he's a nice guy. I'm sure we'll be friends. I'll probably be playing golf with him and his dad as soon as the election's over, because I like him. I've gotten to know him during this election. But what's going to happen when I get there day one, I don't know until I'm elected. I have an opportunity to find out.
Okay. Any other questions?
This isn't really a question, more of a statement. I appreciate your public service and thank you for coming in for the interview. Of the legislation that we've tracked, your voting record on that past legislation is just, in my opinion, I think abysmal. And I know that has no relevance on the tax collector, but we tend to believe that past performance is a indicator of future performance. And I know legislatively you would be very limited in role with tax collector, but I just don't see how personally I, in good conscience, could seek to further your role in public office. Do you have anything?
Can I comment on that? Sure.
Yes, of course.
Let me tell you, thank you for your candor. I appreciate that. I know that I am not the poster child candidate for the concerned taxpayers of Duval County. And part of me says, I regret that. Part of me says, that's part of leadership. I will tell you that it is easy to lead when times are good. And I'm very jealous that my opponent, Mr. Kravitz, had the opportunity to be on the city council when you couldn't print money fast enough for them to spend it. I'm very jealous of that. And Mr. Kravitz was a leader and a former president of council, and as a former president of council, I have all respect for anybody that ascends to that office. It's an incredibly pressure-filled office. I will tell you that Mr. Kravitz in the primary went extremely negative against me in this campaign and used facts provided by this organization for that negativity. What he failed to mention in his mail pieces was that the millage rate that he beat me up in his campaign, the millage rate that he talks about me raising today is still 3/4 of a mil lower than what Mr. Kravitz approved this last year on the city council. So he approved a tax rate higher than what I just approved. He talks about the fact that I created the garbage fee. Well, the reality was Mr. Kravitz was a swing vote in 1989 that created the original garbage tax. And that meeting started at 7 p.m. and that vote happened at 5 a.m. the next morning in cover of darkness. So, yeah, am I happy that this organization doesn't, and me personally don't agree with the positions I have? That doesn't make me happy at all. But the reality is this city needed leadership and we needed to make tough decisions, and I had to make tough decisions. I would love to be able to sit here and run for office and say, I never raised taxes. But the reality is, if you watch, Mr. Morrill can probably attest to this better than I can, if you watch how votes take place on the council, there's many times that it's very slow voting until the decision is made, which is 10 votes in a direction. And then all of a sudden, other people go, no, 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 right after that. I mean, it's really easy to be vote 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, because the decision has been made in the first 10 votes. I'm proud of my record on the city council. I'm proud that we put this city in a position that both, well not both, but all the mayoral candidates that were running all got to say, I will not raise your taxes. They're not going to raise your taxes because we had to make the hard decisions. They're going to be the beneficiaries of us making difficult decisions. And you go back to the 80s and 90s, and you wonder, wait a minute, what if they may have made a little different decisions back there, not increase taxes, but leave the taxes where they were? Would we have some of the pension problems we have now? Would we have to be making some of the decisions we have to make now? I don't know that. I'm not a financial expert by any means, but I'm proud of the record that I have, and I'm disappointed in that my opponent wants to use that to what I've done to beat me up without telling the rest of the story. Because if you tell the whole story, we're both great public servants. The real question is, who do you want to lead your tax collector's office? Mr. Kravitz, I assume, is going to go negative again in this campaign, and that's disappointing because on election day, the voters spoke out pretty loud and said, we don't want negativity. And boy, I got to tell you, there's enough negativity around the word tax collector's office to last a lifetime. So I think it's time to change and get positive and go do a great job and motivate people to serve the customers better.
Anybody?
Nothing further.
Okay, well, in that case, I'm going to go ahead and give you another 2 minutes to say whatever you care to say.
Sure. Well, let me tell you again, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for listening to the other side of the story. I knew coming here today that I wasn't going to be a favorite of this organization, and I understand and respect that. But I will tell you, the organization is extremely important because every decision I made, I took it from input that I received from this organization. What you're doing plays an important role in the community, and I appreciate that. I say that because understand what I'm doing in this community. I have an unbelievable passion for Jacksonville. I love Jacksonville. I've been here my whole life. I'm going to be here my whole life. I'm not going to ever live anywhere else. And I'm proud to have the opportunity the last 8 years to serve on the city council. And I'm really excited about the opportunity to go in and change the community's opinion of the tax collector's office. I motivate people. That's what I do. That's why I'm successful, not just in business, but in the community. And I want to go in and motivate the 200 or so employees in the tax collector's office to serve all of us better. If you'll give me an opportunity on May 17th, obviously I'd love to have the support of this organization as I run this campaign. I will guarantee you, you're not going to be disappointed in what you do. Because I'm going to go in, and 4 years from now, I'm sure that people are going to say, wow, it's amazing the difference in those people in that office. I've done it in the past, I can do it in the future, and I need the help of the voters on May 17th to be able to accomplish that. So I thank you for your time this morning, and look forward to your vote on May 17th.